We're going looking through the section through a chimney breast. We're going to draw it at a scale of 1:10. A lot of the times they're asking for a scale of 1:5, which makes it a bit more complicated. So for this drawing I'm just going to draw it at 1:10 to make all the measurements easier to understand. And then I'll explain at the end about doing a scale of 1:5 drawing. To start the drawing, we have our chimney blockwork built up coming out through the roof. So where you see your chimney stack coming out through the roof, you've got blockwork on the outside. So 100mm block, 100mm block. We've got our sand lime mix, which is 50mm either side. We've got the clay flue liner, which is a 30mm wall, and the internal diameter, which is the important diameter, is 200mm on the flue liner. So to start the drawing, we'll set it out 10, 5, 3, 20, 3, 5 and 10, and that's the central part of the drawing. The pitch, we'll do it at a 30-degree angle. It might change in drawings, they might say 45 degrees, they could say 35 degrees, it doesn't really matter. For this one I'm going to do a 30-degree pitch. The rafter, unless they state otherwise, is always 150mm by 44mm. What that means is that this distance here is 150, and when you see the ends of the timbers, these are 44. So that width there, 44, this one here is 44. Battens, 44 by 44 at 250mm centers. So from the center of one batten to the center of the next batten, 250 center to center, C to C. You have lead flashing coming up the wall to stop rain getting in under the roof. A lead gutter up here so that when the rainwater runs down, it gathers here, but it will drop off down either side of the chimney, so it can't get in through the chimney rest. And very important, you have a lead apron. This piece of lead here, what that stops is water that will soak through the chimney because there's no cavity and can drop down inside into the house. So what happens here is the water can get in through this block wall, run down the inside of the wall, but it's got nowhere to go except come back out. Same thing over here, the water can run through the block, come down, it's got nowhere to go, so it'll basically find its way out again. So it can't get into the house is the key thing. Right, we'll get started. We're starting off with our measurements for the chimney breast. So 10mm for the blocks, 5mm of sand, cement and lime, 1, 2, 3mm for the wall of the flue liner. The internal diameter we said is 20. We have again 1, 2, 3mm for the flue liner, and then we have 5mm of sand and lime and 10mm for the blockwork. And take those up with construction lines. So that's the center of the drawing set up. Everything else is built around this. Okay, that's the main part of the drawing set in. Roof, we'll put in 30 degrees of an angle. So just to set that out lightly, you can draw your rafter in anywhere there. 150mm thick rafter. So 15mm in the drawing, and drop it in. We can start straight away by setting out the rafters. The timber cannot touch the blockwork. We need a gap, usually of about 25mm, but you don't need to measure that. So we just start off by drawing in the end of the timber. So this would be a bridging piece. We said it's 44mm thick, so 4.5mm wide roughly. and that gives us the bottom portion of the rafter coming down. End grain always shown with an X. Top half is the exact same. Again, it cannot touch the blockwork. This is the closest point, so step back about 25 millimeters in real life, so about 2 mil. Again, 4.5 millimeters wide. And a rafter running up. That's the position of our two rafters. Our chimney stack. So the chimney is going to come straight up through the roof. And the flue liner is the central part of it. You can come well above the roof. We'll get to the measurements that are needed for how much it has to project up at the end, but you can come up as high as you want. So I've set in the top of the flue liner. Each flue liner is 450 millimeters high, the height of 2 blocks. So 450 down, which is 45, 90, and you can go the same again, 45 and 90. And that gives me the joints in the flue liners. Our chimney cap, there's no set measurements for it. It'd need to be about 150 millimeters thick, so a thickness of 150. And it needs to project out past the edges of the blockwork. We can let it out about 50 millimeters. So 5 millimeters out past the blocks. Here's the block, out 5. On some of the drawings you'll see decoration. There's no need for that. No marks going for decorations. So we have the shape of the cap. It is made out of concrete. So we'll show it. And you're going to have a drip groove showing. So to stop water running back in under the blockwork. We've got a drip groove. Blocks come down. We'll start with the slates. I've just put in the shading and the colouring to show the symbols for the chimney stack, just so it stands out a little bit better. After that, we get on to our slates. The battens for the slates, 44 mil thick. So I'll just step up 4.5 mil. I'll put a light construction line on, so that I'll be able to draw on each of the battens. I'm going to go right up the roof, because there's battens on the high and the low side. The chimney. Starting off, our first batten is going to go at the top of the rafter here, and we're going to work down. 250 millimeter centers. You can use a compass or whatever you like for this, but just measure down 25 each time. 25, 50, 75, 100. I get my dots. I'll measure down 4.4 again. And again from there I can do the same thing. $25, $50, $75. That gives me the positions of the battens. The battens are 250mm centers. Battens in on the lower side. Up the top, same thing. Now I said you could use a compass. Take your 25 on the compass. Start from right at the blockwork. And we'll come with a 25 up the way. And again, 4.4 of width. Now important here is we need plywood for the lead gutter. So we've got our battens in first of all. And then we'll put in a piece of plywood. And no measurements for this, it's just going to be the same thickness as the battens. Battens are 44. So we'll just draw on the plywood the same thickness. Plywood just comes down anywhere at all, take it across to form the gutter. It needs to be 44 or 4.4 thick. So we have our plywood in for the gutter. We need a batten underneath it, 44 by 44, to hold that plywood in place, and that's the one piece of timber that's actually fixed onto the chimney, and that can't be avoided. So we have our plywood here. Meeting up with the batten. That's the drawing. The slate. We show a slate coming down the roof. Just start off it. Next one up on top. The next one covers 3 slates. You start from just above the starting point of the batten. So don't come way up the batten. It needs to just clip the batten. Covers 3 slates, and we have 100mm overlap. So it starts from here, comes down, down, and we have a 100mm overlap. That is our overlap on the drawing there. And that's really important. Next slate, same thing. Have it clipping the start of the batten. It comes down, and we've got our 100mm overlap. So again, 100mm overlap. A second slate to finish it off. another 100mm overlap. And then we have our lead flashing. And again, our lead flashing needs to overlap here 100mm, as if it was a slate, and that just turns up the wall a little bit. No measurement for that. That's the bottom portion of the roof drawn in. Top portion of the roof then, same idea. We have a short little slate here to begin with, and it comes down into the gutter. Second one is a full length slate, so again it covers the 3 battens and the 100mm overlap. Next one up is a full slate, 3 battens and a 100mm overlap. So we've got our 3 battens that is touching plus the 100mm overlap, and that's our slates drawn in. We have lead in the gutter, so the gutter is lead lined. And the lead turns up. We need a flashing to come out over each of those 2 pieces of lead, and they're built into the wall. Lead flashing up here as well. And our lead apron sits on top of this piece. And it's got a slight turn up where it hits the flue liner. That is our lead work done. So we have our lead apron, lead flashing, lead flashing, lead flashing, and then our lead gutter. That's the detail that goes into it. The chimney is plastered, and we have a bell cast on the chimney. Bell cast means it turns out to cover the lead flashing, and again a drip groove on it. Bell cast on the far side, on the higher side of the roof as well. Comes out, and we have a drip groove. That is the drawing basically done. Make sure you put in all the labels. They're worth 25% of the drawing, so every single one of them needs to go in. You don't need to worry about putting construction lines on for them, but just get them all in neatly. And make sure your lines pointing at each item are light construction lines. For a scale of 1:5, it's good to practice it. This drawing comes up in scale of 1:5 a lot of the time as well. That's getting every real life measurement divided by 5. So your measurements come in, the block work 20, your gap here is 10, your flue liner is 6, gap here is 40, flue liner of 6, sand lime is 10, and your block work is 20. Your rafter becomes 30 by 8mm. Battens 8 by 8mm. Chimney cap 30mm thick. And that's basically the main measurements you need. Give it a go, I'd say, doing scale 1:10 as well as scale 1:5. Scale 1:5 can mess people up in an exam.